Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod Barbecue Podcast. I am here today with Ryan Douthit of Driving Sports TV, and we are going to talk about a couple of new cars or a couple of new SUVs. We're going to talk about his new off-road trail that he's created on his property. We're also going to talk about prices because they're stratospheric now, and it's gotten a little bit nutty. Ryan, how you doing, bud?
I am doing amazing. Thank you very much. Like you led into, we've been building these off-road courses over
Mm-hmm.
at a new test site that we have, and I finally linked the full circle over
Mm-hmm.
the weekend. So I'm pretty stoked about that. And the courses, the way that they're designed is basically you start on one side and it's easy, and it basically escalates the
Yep.
challenge until you get to the very end, and then you can loop it and then come all the way back if you want. But
Yes.
basically, you can spend all day driving on the course and never go anywhere. But that's kind of what off-roading is anyway, isn't it?
Well, that's exactly what it is. But what I want people to understand is if you go to Driving Sports TV on YouTube, Ryan really has created one of the most best laid out and concise courses that any videographer and channel is doing right now. And not only that, but the depths at which he goes into these reviews far surpasses 99% of everything that's out there. Simply because not only does he talk about the vehicle in general, but he talks about the tech in a way that he puts it in layman's terms so that everybody can understand. So if you're looking for a new SUV, a new off-roader, you really got to check out Driving Sports. It really is one of the key. The reviews are long, but you don't get a good review in 6 minutes. You get a good review in
Crush
20
it.
minutes or 30 minutes. So if you're looking for a vehicle, that's where you go to find out. So obviously wanted to bring the man back. We got three vehicles that I want to talk about today. Okay.
Mhm.
Now these are all newbies. I want to talk about the Lexus GX 550 Overtrail, which is
So good.
essentially, I don't want to say it's the same, but it's close to a Toyota Land Cruiser, right? It's kind of the same
Mhm.
platform. We want
Globally, it's the Land Cruiser Prado, which is the
Prado.
smaller one. It's not the 300, which is the big daddy, which is
Yep.
sold as the Lexus LX 600 here in the States.
Right. Then we want to talk about the Wagoneer, the Series 2. Specifically, I want to touch on the Hurricane six-cylinder that's under the
Mm.
hood because everybody kind of is really nervous about that, and I don't think they should be. And then the next one is the Toyota BZ4X, which is the worst Toyota. What are you doing? Worst BZ4X, worst naming convention in the history of the world. Way to make everybody forget it instantaneously.
And guess what's coming out next? The BZ2X. Like nobody's
Right.
going to confuse those two at
No,
all, right?
no, not at all. All right, so let's jump right in. Let's talk about this new Lexus because
Yeah.
it's a beautiful truck, and you seem to really enjoy it.
I love it. And the weirdest thing about it is it's actually not okay, it's expensive.
It
It's a large body on frame Lexus and it's not cheap.
not
But
cheap, 75 plus.
well, no, it doesn't have to be. The video that you might have watched, the one that we've just put up on the channel, that's 68,000, and that's an off-road focused version. So that has
Okay.
the all-terrain tires, it has side step boards, which I hate, but you can take them off.
Hmm.
It also has all of the off-roady features like the MTS and crawl control and the locking rear differential. And at
Okay.
68, that's actually a pretty good package, and it looks awesome. Now
That
you
looks
don't
good.
get like all the features. You don't get the massage seats or anything like that. You got to spend about 8 grand more to get like the full
Wow.
deluxe interior.
Yeah.
But the first Land Cruiser in the US coming back, that's basically the same thing, but the Toyota version, is the first one they're selling is called the first edition, which is the fully
Yeah.
loaded one. And that one's going to sell for 77,000.
So
So
didn't it used to be Lexus was more expensive than Toyota?
yeah,
When did that flip-flop happen?
I think as soon as they decided to bring the Land Cruiser back to the States, I mean, realistically, the Land Cruiser has always been a very expensive US vehicle, even though
It's a
globally you
premium
can buy them.
vehicle. Yeah.
Yeah, globally you could always buy them for fairly, reasonably inexpensive, but those were pretty stripped down models. The US has
Yeah.
only sold the loaded one in recent history. And when the Land Cruiser left a few years ago out of the US market, that one was 90 grand.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the interior was a decade old. So
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it, but on the other hand, you're like, that's 90 grand. That's a lot of
Yeah.
money. But if you bought one and you held on to it for a few years, you would more than make your money back because there's still huge demand for those
Yeah.
vehicles. If you need a full size, fully capable off-roader,
Right.
it's still a great vehicle, but
So
you can't buy it.
right. So let's talk about this GX 550. This is smaller than the outgoing, obviously Land Cruiser, right?
Just a little bit.
A little bit, but it's a great looking vehicle, and
Mhm.
it is a Toyota. It's let's start in the basement. Talk about the drivetrain on this thing.
Well, the powertrain is a turbocharged six-cylinder with the Lexus. The Land Cruiser will have a Turbo 4 hybrid
Hmm.
setup. So that's kind of the biggest difference between the two,
Okay.
at least initially. And what that means is you get a lot of power out of the Lexus version, but that comes at a cost of economy because, like, I was seeing around 15 to 16 mpgs in
Hmm.
combined driving. That's like a lot of highway and a
Yeah.
little trail, but I know trail puts a huge dent in it. And so don't think of that as trail. That was actually like, that's
You were
around town.
off-roading.
I mean, when I'm off-roading, the MPGs plummet even more, but the
Yeah.
general just around town driving, I was getting 15, and
Gotcha. Okay.
that's bad.
Yeah, that's
But
a
again,
yeah.
people don't buy Lexus vehicles. Those are the people typically who don't really care that
Right.
much. And it does take premium, so there's that on top
Yeah.
of that.
Okay.
But they did announce they are going to offer a hybrid version of the GX down the road, but not yet. So we can only talk about what's currently
Sure.
actually shipping. And yeah, as far as looks go,
It's
they
gorgeous.
nailed it. And it's not even one where just a few people like it. Like universally, people love the look of this vehicle. And when you see it black on black, which I would never take a black car off roading if I owned it
Right.
myself, because the smallest scratch is just like,
Yeah, you're
and
seeing
dust
everything.
will scratch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see everything. But black on black, this thing looks so tight. I will not hate anybody who buys one of these just to drive it to the mall because they just
Yeah.
look awesome. And then on the inside, you have a lot of, a reasonable amount of space. Second row maybe isn't as big as one would like sometimes because like you wouldn't fit very well in the second row, but you're a big boy. So
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's fine.
But that's what the larger vehicles are for. I mean, it's not a full size. It's not trying to be a full size, but for like, it's the size that it is. And I don't want to call it mid-size because it's a little
Mhm.
big for a mid-size.
Well, even the
it-
mid-size, anything mid-size right now is a full
they're all
size from
huge.
10 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But the nice thing about this package, and this is where the Toyota totally whiffed on the Sequoia, is because the Sequoia is hybrid only and the batteries are in the same location as in the Tundra because they were kind of cheap in the re-engineering of it.
Yeah.
You end up with a lot of batteries killing your cargo space. And on top of that, they put a third row that's unremovable in the Sequoia. So you end up with like no cargo space in this
Right. For such a massive
vehicle. It's
thing.
like, what if I don't want to carry people? I want to carry stuff. So anyway, this answers that. It's a little smaller than Sequoia, but it has lots of cargo room. You can comfortably fit normal size adults in the second row. Overall, I think it's like they killed it with this vehicle. And I'm really excited to try some other trims. Now, I have driven the fully loaded, I think it was $78,000 or $79,000 Overtrail Plus, which has the massage seats, big panorama sunroof, like basically all the extras. It's nice, but really I think the home run version is the straight Overtrail, which is the one that I test in the most recent videos, and that one's around 68,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and as soon as they crank up volume, you should have no problem getting them. Obviously, they're just now ramping production, so right now they're really hard to find. But they will become. I mean, it's Lexus. They'll make as many as they need.
And this is a true body on frame truck.
Correct. Yeah, and they were very. They went into great depth because I did the national press launch for the Overtrail when it came out, and they didn't just happen to do body on frame. They had a long list of reasons why it's body on frame, and those reasons are very true. I mean, the fact is that if you have a frame that's absorbing the majority of the impacts before it channels it to the body. Whereas with a unibody vehicle, that stuff just gets transmitted through the entirety of the body, which not only tires drivers out, it also fatigues the chassis earlier because you have, so basically they engineered this from a Land Cruiser, which is expecting to be doing like, medical emergency work in the third world. And they needed to run for 20 years. That's the engineering they put under this.
Well, and that's what I think a lot of people, some people that listen might not understand this. Those who buy Land Cruisers and buy these off over trail Lexuses and stuff like that,
Mhm.
believe it or not, they see a lot of off-road use. These
Yeah, they
most of
do.
the buyers, they're not just mall crawlers. They use these
It's
things.
funny because like in the comment section of YouTube, people are like, "Oh, you're the only person who will ever take that off road." It's
No.
like you don't go to the trailheads in the Pacific Northwest on weekends because it's loaded with these things. I mean, you
Right.
see G wagons parked up there, in which of course people are like, "Oh, nobody drive off roads a G wagon." It's like, yeah, just go to Mount Rainier on the weekend. There's G
They're
wagons
everywhere.
in the trailhead parking lots. Yeah, I mean it's not a. But then again, you also see Volkswagen Jettas in the same trail
Right.
parking. Like how did you get that up here?
Right. Well, I think, I think a lot of the new SUVs that are coming out are kind of I think there was a while where they were just mall crawl spec, right? They
Yeah.
didn't really, go down the off-road path. But now I would say in the last 10, 15 years, people are really starting to get back and starting to
Yeah.
to go to the outdoors and really use these things off-road. Manufacturers are starting to see that.
The Nissan Pathfinder is a great example of the way the industry moved because, like, 20 years ago, the Pathfinder was a serious off-road
Off-roader. Yeah.
SUV. Yeah. And then they turned it into a minivan. And because at that time, with I think it was around, what was it, 2008,
Yeah.
2010? I don't know. It's all a big haze. But at some point they turned it, I don't track Nissan stuff that
Yeah.
much, but
Yeah.
so I don't have exact dates. But when they turned it into basically the minivan, that was at a time where off-roading was not
Yeah.
that common. People didn't do it.
No.
But now that it's swinging back or has swung back, now they have the Rock Creek version of
Right.
the Pathfinder. It's the off-roady version of the
Yeah.
Pathfinder. And you're like, could you just make the old Pathfinder but make it better? I mean,
Yeah, well, I
give us
remember when
something
the Pathfinders came out in the late 80s, they were
Mhm.
based off the hard body pickup, and they were great
Yeah.
off-roaders. Like they were
Yeah.
stout. They were great off-roaders. But yeah,
And the formula. Go ahead.
no, but everything is cyclical, right? They go, die hard. It's like the greatest example ever is Chevy Blazer,
Oh,
right?
God,
Just
the
beautiful,
new Gen
amazing.
Blazer.
Oh, just
stabbed me in
what?
the eye.
Just no. I mean, the good part is, stuff is starting to come back around, which I want to jump to the next vehicle that we're talking about,
Mhm.
or that I want to touch on, which is the Wagoneer, the Series 2. And
Yeah.
that's a big truck. Like that is a
It is.
big truck.
Now we need to do a little bit, I think, of backgrounder on this
Yep,
one too. Is
absolutely.
the fact that when Jeep launched the Wagoneer, they're like, it is not a Jeep, it is a
A
Wagoneer.
Wagoneer. Yeah. You better know that.
And as of today, it is not a Wagoneer, it is a Jeep Wagoneer. They changed that like 2 weeks ago. They're like, no, they're Jeep Wagoneers now. It's like every single time a car maker tries to like have a sub brand, they always kill it.
Yeah.
Like
Because
Scion,
it doesn't work.
good example. It doesn't work. It's like, why would you? Anyway,
Yeah.
what's branding? Like, it's like, dude, Jeep is one of the most valuable brands
In the world.
the world. And you're going to be like, no, we don't want to associate with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the other part. People are very proud of Jeep. If you have a Jeep, that's a good thing. People want to see that. And you do not want
aspirational.
it is aspirational, but you don't want people saying, well, just so you know, it's not a Jeep. It's a Wagoneer. Like use that brand equity. You know what I mean? You've got
Absolutely.
almost 100 years of brand equity. Guys, come on. So I'm actually very glad they did that.
I mean, it's kind of like the whole world watched it and we're all like, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, driving the Wagoneer, the great thing about the Wagoneer is that they do offer all of their all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive systems, depending on your trim level. You can go all the way up to, I should know the name of it. Select Track 2.
Yeah.
Is that it?
I think it's Electric too. Yeah.
Sound almost exactly the same. I always have to
Yeah.
look at a chart because I'm like, wait, which one is that?
Yeah.
But their systems are actually really, really advanced on those, which is what I like. They, even though they look like mall crawlers, they actually they have
They're good,
legitimate
dude.
hardware underneath. Yeah, locking diffs, the whole balalac.
Yeah.
But actually, kind of funny because Hurricane 6, the Turbo 6, which is in it, is
Mhm.
great. I love it. But it's funny. I actually went. I hit the Poison Spider Trail down in Moab
Yeah.
a few days ago, and I was driving in a last year Jeep Wrangler that had the Hurricane 4 in it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And uh, like I knew it when I first started the video because I was shooting a video
Yeah.
on this, and I totally forgot it was the Turbo 4 through most
Yeah.
of it. But near the end of the day, I'm like, why are the fans all running so hard? Like
Well,
the
it's
cooling
working.
system was just like, "Ah!"
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the difference. Because I actually switched to a 6 after that, a Pentastar 6, and it was way more chill. It had less power,
Yeah.
but when you're crawling or doing anything technical off-road, you don't need power for
Right.
technical. Like if you're going through mud and
Oh
dirt
yeah.
and all that,
Yeah, you do.
more power is good. But it's funny because a lot of people think, well, if you're crawling and you're doing these technical things, you need all the power. It's like, no, you just need enough power.
Right. Well, that's the big, I think one of the biggest things, right? When people talk about, the demise of the Hemi and that's going away and everybody's, well, these Turbo 4 and the Turbo 6s now, turbos are okay. Turbo 4s, if you're really wheeling, you're working those little guys because the turbos are constantly
they put in the
spooled.
effort. Yeah.
Yeah, they're working. Where a big Turbo 6, it's working, but it's really not working that hard, you know? And the Hurricane,
Yeah,
I think
you're not going to be going full blow on a
no,
Turbo 6 roading. Just
no, and
typically aren't.
the Wagoneer is not a light vehicle. I mean,
No.
that's every bit of 5,000 plus pounds. And that
It's
Turbo
kind of a
6 seems to,
shockingly big vehicle, and also the fact that it's so angular, it just kind of makes it
yeah,
even look bigger. So like you're standing next to the thing, like this thing's a Goliath. It's kind of how I felt when I first saw an Excursion. Remember the old
yeah,
Ford,
right, sure,
big
yeah,
boy? And I was like, I lived in a small house with a small driveway, and it did not fit in my driveway. It's like that's how
yeah,
I felt about the Wagoneer. But
yeah,
you see them on the road, and they actually seem totally normal. It's just that the
yeah.
scale, the design, kind of gives
Well,
it the scale.
everybody now is going back to the Lego design, right?
Yep.
And it used to be okay. Let's try to add some aero into this. Now everybody's just like just maximize the space. Give me a rectangle, chop some pieces out of it, and put some tires on it.
Yep.
And I feel like that's what
we'll
they're
call
doing.
it an off-road trim.
Right. Yeah.
Hyundai
Yeah.
and their XRT
Yeah.
pseudo off-roady kind of trims.
Right. So how was the Wagoneer off on the off-road course?
Well, I haven't taken it on the new course yet.
Okay.
I did take it onto our older course, which we still have over the mountain course, and it did everything we needed it to. I mean, like it's just such an effortless. I mean, I hate to say it, but the videos that look really good are when I take a car that's not very good off-road and it struggles but still gets through. That's kind of like my favorite type of video.
Yeah.
The Jeeps just the Wagoneer just makes it so easy. It's kind of a boring video in a way. You're like, okay, I'm going to turn on this mode, and
It just does it.
we're done. I mean, it's just it just does it, and
Yeah.
and that was pretty good. I did do some like ice driving with it as well too, and again, all the features just kind of make it
Yeah.
easy, makes it look good. You
Yeah.
do have, I would stress that everybody, if anybody buys a Wagoneer, spend a few minutes watching videos so you can kind of see
Right.
there's a lot of options, and they've really simplified the options with these like modes that you can now pick instead of,
Right.
the old way was, well, I'm going to engage this, I'm going to lock this, I'm going to turn this on, I'm going to turn that
Right.
on. They've been simplifying it, and I'm not a huge fan of this, but I see why they're doing it.
Yeah.
You want, the guy, anybody who's just going to go on the weekend, first time ever off-road, you don't want them having to like get confused by all the 50 options.
Right.
So they basically have, the knob where you're like, it's off-road, it's on-road, it's snow.
Right.
But they do a good job. The programming is quite good. And
Yeah.
the only issue I would have recommending a Wagoneer is strictly reliability long-term and maintenance. And those they're TBD. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying
Right.
they're TBD because it's a new,
Right.
it's a new thing for them. And, historically, some of those Wagoneers were really good and they lasted
Yeah.
forever. And I hope for the same, but I don't know. Some of the Wagoneer like name stickers aren't even put on straight. So it kind of makes you
Right.
like, we'll keep an eye on
Yeah,
this
where's
one.
yeah, exactly. Well, let me ask you something. Doing all the off-roading stuff, how would you compare the new stuff that for, say the 2024 newest tech to something that say came out in 2005, 2010?
No, let's just say like versus the old Pathfinder. I owned one of those for a while. I even had a
Right.
96 Forerunner. The
Yeah.
fact is that so long as you get past the whole physically locking, your hubs on the outside in the mud, because that sucks. Once you get past that, if you have a four-wheel drive system that can lock the rear, and it's a part-time system or has a lockable centers, like Torsen, which is what the GX 550 has, then they kind of are all the same. And I know I'm going to kind of get some crap for that, but once you're locking your middle, you're locking your rear, the next list of fancy things are disconnectable sway bars. So you hit a button and you can like reach more, because if your tire can reach the ground, you have so much more capability. And that's actually one thing that I don't think is being talked about enough with the GX 550, is that it has a system called, I'm going to go into the weeds a little bit here. But there's a system called KDSS, the Kinetic Dynamic Suspension System. I think that's the right acronym. Anyway, it was developed in Australia for the original Land Cruiser. And then it was first in the US, or maybe it was developed for the GX. Anyway, it goes back decades. And the original system was hydraulic, and it was all these lines that would go between the shocks of all the wheels. And so if it felt like one wheel was hanging down, then it would like adjust the other systems. So in short, what you would end up, it was this complicated hydraulic system that would be, when you're driving normal, you would basically corner almost flat. But the moment you're off-road and it needs that articulation, it would give you like, a foot of articulation or more. And, and it was a pretty incredible system. So the GX, so you don't need a disconnecting sway bar in that case, because it's all hydraulic. The new GX has an electronic version of the same. Now, the neat thing about that is it can do all four corners independently. Like if one's doing one, then the other, it knows based on the program you're in as to how it's going to respond to conditions. But like I was floored when I was doing the off-road stuff. We have an articulation thing where it's going left, right. Front wheels are going down, back wheel, crisscross, up and down. The amount of wheel tuck, that rear wheel as it tucked into the body while the other one was reaching down and it touched the ground. And I'm just like if you do that in a Subaru, your wheel is 2 feet off the ground in this course. It's like, because your nose is down in a hole, your rear is sticking up to the moon, and that's the difference. And that's not to knock one, but to the other. But that is, if you're really off-roading, you want all your wheels touching the ground. All the traction systems in the world will help you. So really what it comes down to is, if you go to the old school style things, do you have four-wheel drive systems? Check. Okay. Can you disconnect your sway bar? Check. Once you have those things done, you're pretty much golden in 99% of all situations. Beyond that, it comes down to geometry. Can you approach your obstacle? Wheeling in Moab, again, I happen to be on 37-inch wheels, which raises the vehicle up a lot. I was in a Jeep, so there's like, here's the Jeep, here's the front tire. Basically, if you can see it, you can climb it, which you can't say with most vehicles, because the engines hang over those front wheels, and then you can't even get to the obstacle because your motor's in the way. And you
now, Ryan, what about all the tech? Because every new off-roader now has some kind of crawl control or this or that. Are most of them, and you see these stupid, like, and I'm not an off-roader, right? Even though I own a bunch of SUVs, I really don't go off-road that much.
You don't off-road, I know. It's okay.
Yeah, but you see these things where they have bounce control and this and that and trail turn assist, where the front right wheel and the back left wheel are spinning.
I hate that, because that tears up trails bad.
But is that
really, really bad?
Is it necessary? Is it necessary, or are they mostly gimmicks, do you think?
Well, it depends.
Like I think the tech is cool, but is it practical?
So the one you might have noticed when I said that for the basics, you need a middle locker and a rear locker. For more advanced off-roading, you need a front locker too. And there's a very short list of vehicles that provide a short locker. And I'm
really quick. Talk about what a locker is for those that might not know.
Good point. Most vehicles have what are called open differentials, and for a very good reason. When you're turning left or right, the outside wheels actually spin more than the inside wheel. So you actually have one wheel doing this and the other wheel doing this. Right. It's hard to do this with both hands and not think.
And on a podcast, one wheel is spinning faster than the other.
Exactly. So your outside wheels are actually covering more distance than your inside wheel. So what a locking differential will do is it'll lock the inside and the outside, so they're turning at exactly the same rate, and they are physically locked together. So nothing you do to this wheel will, it will, the other wheel will do exactly the same thing. They do this. Now, obviously, you don't want to do that while you're turning, because then you'll be like, chick, 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 chick,
Right.
chick, chick. The outside wheel will be stuttering, and that's hugely potentially damaging to your powertrain, especially if you do it all the time. And a lot of people who have part-time four-wheel drive systems don't quite understand this, because the same logic goes front to back as well. Your front wheels actually go further distance than your back wheels do. So you want open differentials while you're driving regular road. But when you go off-road and you're climbing something and one wheel has no traction, if it's an open differential, that wheel is just going to spin. And the way physics works is that all the power, this is a gross simplification, all the power will go to the easiest way out of the vehicle, which is the spinning tire. So you end up with all your power going to the vehicle, to the tire where you don't want it to go. So what a locker will do is it'll just put all the power to the rear wheels, and they'll both spin regardless if one's on the ground or not. So you can move forward. Now, the benefit with that is you get no super spinny stuff happening, and it just moves. Now, vehicles like Subaru, Nissan, anything that's an all-wheel drive that requires tech to get the vehicle forward, what they're doing is they're doing wheel braking. So as the wheel's spinning and all the power is leaching out of that tire, it'll hit the brakes depending on the vehicle, hard or soft. Hyundai has an almost, you can't even tell it's doing it, not in a good way. But they said that they don't like the jarring, so they make it smooth, which means that hardly any power gets shifted to the other wheel. Subaru does a very hard lock with their X mode system, and that will shock more power to the other side, which kind of lurches you forward. Now, the downside with those systems is that they require rotation of the tire, so you can actually chew up the trail quite a lot. So it's not ideal, but the nice thing is that it's cheap. It's software based, so they can modify it based on conditions, whether you need more wheel spin or less. And then they can also, engage it, disengage it as necessary, so that a normal person driving every day will never accidentally drive around with all their things locked and damage the powertrain. So really what it is it's dumbing down the systems. But on the other hand, it's also giving way more capable systems to people who don't understand them and don't need to understand them. Now that I covered all that, Toyota has always been against a front locker. And I think the reason is because they're easy. If you're putting that much torque to your front wheels and it's a real rough condition, you can shock the system quite a lot. And I think for reliability concerns, they don't like physical front lockers. Because your vehicle's doing a lot with the front wheels. Not only are you steering and you're also locking, it can just cause problems. So what they do is they rely on that same wheel spin braking tech. They call it MTS or A-Track, and they've had it forever as A-Track. MTS is just a newer version. It's called Multi-Terrain Select, where you can pick, I'm on rock, I'm on gravel, I'm on this. And it provides that locking functionality to the front wheels in lieu of an actual physical locker.
And it does that through electronics and software.
Correct. And it uses the braking tech to give you that same effect. Is it as good? No. Is it halfway there? Yes, it's better than nothing. And I feel like I've gone up some pretty good trails with MTS. And sometimes you don't even need to put your rear locker on, because MTS works around the entire system. Because again, like you're putting on your locker, you get through the hard thing, you forget, you leave it on, you start turning, and you're like going.
Right.
So that's way more information than you asked for. Yeah, there we go.
No, but that I think that people wanted to know. At least I did. I'm assuming other people. It's a great explanation. So now let me ask you this: a lot of what we're seeing now is we're seeing these EVs that EV SUVs that are coming out, right? The BZ4X. That's an EV. You did take it kind of on a mild off-road test. You did. Are EVs decent off-road? Like, so for instance, now that the Tesla Cybertruck came out, you're seeing some videos pop up about people going off-road and the electronics getting all wet and all this other BS. But there are kind of two different camps. One is that you have instantaneous torque to each of the four wheels if it's a
Yes.
four motor unit, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Is that go through a little bit? I'm making you work today. Go through a little bit of are EVs decent off-road, and will they
They
ever compete as real off-roaders?
They can be, but see, it all comes down to the software. Like, even the Cybertruck is going to offer a rear locking option, but
Mm-hmm.
they need a software update to enable that. So it's not
Yep.
currently on the truck. I don't know enough about how that is being implemented. I assume it's a software locker, which is like that wheel braking tech I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about, but being more extreme. I don't know for certain. So
Okay.
don't hold me to that.
Fine.
Rivian, which is a competitor and has been out,
Yeah, of
they've
course.
had their truck out for years at this point. Which, by the way, have you seen the lease deals on Rivians right now?
Yeah, crushing it.
I mean, I'm not getting
Dude,
kickbacks here, but I just got to say, holy moly.
yeah, dude. Well, I have to be honest with you. The Rivian, and I forget the model of the SUV, not the pickup, the RT2 or whatever it's
The
called,
R1S.
R1S. That is honestly one of the best looking SUVs
And
on
that's
the
not
road,
the
in
one
my
they're offering the
opinion.
deals on. But if you want the truck,
Oh
they're
yeah,
like, they're knocking 10 grand off, plus you still qualify for the 7 grand and lease deals
yeah,
that are like, I think 700 a month or something,
yeah. It's kind
which
of
is,
like I
it's a
think,
great truck.
yeah,
But anyway, to your point, the top end Rivian uses quad motors, a wheel on each,
yep,
sorry, a motor on each wheel, that is the Barbie dreamland for off-road potential, because you're
right.
controlling individual speed on individual wheels with a massive amount of torque at 0 RPM,
Mm-hmm.
which means that the first turn of the wheel can have insane amount of torque, but the actual execution comes down to the software. And
Right.
the software is good on the Rivian, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement. And simply because I've seen videos, I haven't actually done any like hard off-roading with Rivians yet. They just haven't sent me one. But the watching the video, it looks like the brake vectoring is very similar to the way
Yeah.
Subaru does it with their open diffs, which is kind of weird because it's like, well, if you have software and you can just control it, you should be able to fake a locker pretty easily. You just
Yeah.
say
One would think.
but it doesn't seem to work that way in reality. And I don't honestly know why it doesn't, if it's a technical limitation or if it's a software limitation. Like, is there a technical hardware limitation with that? Anyway, it's not like a proper locker. And a proper locker, if you can move all of your wheels at the same rate, that will get you through anything that you can physically maneuver through.
Gotcha.
And that is kind of like, it's kind of funny using all of this advanced tech just to try to mimic something as physical, as logical as a welded rod.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's the funny part, right? That's why you see
We need 50 engineers, 20 years of science, and we might be able to emulate
right,
a stick.
right. One Bubba in
Wheels
a
on
shed
both
with a
sides.
welder. Yeah. Well, that's when you also run into the other camp, right? Where you go, well, something with an independent front suspension, an independent rear is never going to be as good as solid live axles, front and rear off road, and you have
Yeah.
these different camps. Which
But I was driving that Wrangler with solid axles on the front the other day. Oh my God! Like, again, it's a cheat code when you're off road, but
right,
when you're on road, I thought I was going to die like every 5 minutes. It is so wandery and so floaty, and this is
So there-
before we aired the tires down. It
you
was
know,
like,
it's there. Solid live axles in the front are so I have one, two. Okay, so I have two vehicles. My old Wagoneer is a solid live axle, Dana 44 up front, and my '02 Grand Cherokee is solid live axle off front. And then my Bronco is totally different because that's an I-beam, right?
right.
So yes, I will say solid live axles driving on road, they're a little.
Oh, come on, Mike. Just say it. They're hot garbage.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, you're essentially driving a tractor, and it just kind of drives like that. Don't think it's going to be a handler, But what I will say is that off road, the off roading that I drive, they're billy goats. They'll just hook and climb and hook and climb.
Yeah. And and it's because you get that articulation with those arms that you just can't get with fully independent suspension, and it's just the way it is.
So all right, so let me ask you this Toyota, this BZ4, I can't even say it, BZ4.
Nobody's gonna know the name. Yeah, the BZ4RX.
stop, and just call it something. I don't care
So the
what you call
BZ
it.
stands for Beyond Zero. It's the most Japanese name you could come up with,
Oh, God.
obviously. Um, and then the 4X being that it's an all-wheel drive.
It's all-wheel drive. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming very, 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 very few owners will ever take these off-road. But if they
yeah,
do,
0 to none.
yeah, is it at all capable?
The only caveat to the comment that nobody will ever take these off-road is the fact that the exact same vehicle is sold also as the Subaru Solterra. And most Subaru owners do actually go up to
Off-road.
trailheads at least. I mean, I don't want to say the more trails, definitely not off-road, but like they'll go up dirt roads and.
So
and
is that a
stuff like
shared platform between Toyota
It's
and Subaru?
exactly the same vehicle.
It is. Okay.
Yeah, there's some minor differences. Like the Solterra has moved to a not fully round steering wheel. It has a slight cut on the bottom and the top now, and it has a little bit more ground. Well, the reason they do that is because they have this stupid gauge cluster that the steering wheel gets in the way of, because the what was it? One of the overseas versions was possibly going to have a yoke, so they put this gauge cluster in the way that when you have a regular steering wheel, you're looking at the steering wheel, not the speedo, which is like, what are you guys thinking?
Stop.
Let's just stop it. So Subaru cut their wheel a little bit, so you can actually see the gauge cluster now, which it's okay.
Fine.
They're fixing a problem that they didn't create because they did not engineer that part of the car. But what Subaru did provide was the all-wheel drive tech. It's their first all-electric, all-wheel drive production tech. So it's funny, you get into this Toyota BZ4X and you see this control for X mode, which is Subaru's trademarked all-wheel drive system. And it's actually a really good system. I've done tons of things with it. And this BZ4X is not an individual hub motor, of course, on each side of the, there's not a motor on each wheel because this thing doesn't cost $100,000. It has a motor in the front, motor in the back, no physical connection between the front and rear axles, but both of those motors are running an axle with open diffs. So the brake vectoring torque, the torque brake vectoring system is very important to its all-wheel drive capability. And going through our easy trail, it actually it struggled probably the least of any other non-off-road intended vehicles that we've taken on it.
Okay.
Like even the Volvo, what was it? The XC40 electric. It struggled more than the BZ4X did. And Volvos are generally considered to have pretty good all-wheel drive systems.
Yeah.
Although there's a big hoorah now that the Chinese own them. So people are like, it's not the old classic Volvos.
Nothing's the old classic anything. That's why they made them new again. Stop.
Touche.
Like
there.
I mean, this is one of my biggest. It should have been the old one. It should. Well, no. That's not the way evolution works.
You want the old one? Go buy the used one. Go buy a 240.
Go buy the used one.
They're amazing. But yeah. I digress. The BZ4X is very capable. Now, Subaru has two technologies on this. They have the X mode, but then they have a new thing called, it's a stupid name, grip control. Okay. I think it's called grip control because all the good names are taken. But it's kind of funny. It's like Toyota's crawl control system, where basically it'll do maximum power shift while also crawling the vehicle along. So all you have to worry about is your line. But as we see in my video, the crawl control is not nearly slow enough. Like most of these like hill descent control systems and crawl control systems on mainstream vehicles target around 3 miles an hour, which to me, if you need those systems, you need to be doing 1 mile per hour. You need to be going much slower. And that's not just because it's because if you need that kind of help, you're actually dealing with a real complicated situation. Crawling over logs or crawling over rocks or ditches that are really extreme, and you really need to focus. So I turned it on, and the first couple feet were really slow, and they're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And then it kind of rested on a log, and then it just lurched forward. And I'm like, okay, they have some work they need to do on this system. But the nice thing is that being all electric, it comes back to the fact that the underlying tech, all electric, 100% RPM, they should be able to crawl that at like 1/3 of a mile per hour if they have to. And I would like that option. And I did set it. There's 5 speed settings, and I set it to the slowest setting, and it was still too fast. But that's my argument also with hill descent control, which is on a mainstream off-roady target thing. 99% of them are too fast. The only people who do it right are Jeep, because you can go all the way down to like 0.3 miles per hour, which is amazing. And well, you can do it with crawl control too on the Toyotas. So they
Okay.
also do it well, because you can use crawl control. They have a separate version
Yeah.
that also does hill descent, and you're just crawling down, which is good.
Okay.
Because if you're on a face of something like this and it's sandy or snowy,
Oh
you
yeah, you're
don't
gonna
wanna
slide.
lose
You
grip.
don't want those.
M-
Right.
Most of these hill descent control systems, Hyundai's, Kias,
Yeah.
any of the mainstream brands, I'm not just picking on them, but those
Yeah.
are the ones that come to the top of my head. They actually have a full speed roll for about 1 or 2 tire rotations, which is usually about 3 feet.
Yep.
And then it grabs.
Right.
So yeah, what do you not do on snow if you're concerned about
Yeah.
slipping? You don't like stop.
Right.
You
Right.
try to maintain a slow thing. So all these systems need work. And it's funny because it's just electronics. They should be able to
Yeah.
ease it in better, but I don't think people demand it because people don't understand them. And they're like,
Okay.
oh, it has crawl control. Great. It's like, yeah, but not in any way you actually want to use it.
Yeah. All right. So one more thing, because then unfortunately we got to wrap up. So I want to
Yeah.
talk about price really quick. We got about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So right now, on the 550, the the Lexus GX 550, the Wagoneers, this little BZ4, whatever name, I can't stand it. Do you think any manufacturer will actually come out with an off-roader or a good SUV that's sub,
Mhm.
I want to say 35 grand? Because all of these are well over 40K. And I'll say this. This is, give me your best pick for $40,000.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's right.
You can get a 4Runner like for $44,000. You can get a really nicely equipped 4Runner for off-road. That is so that will have all of the off-road toys.
This is the 4Runner that's been around for the last decade, 2 decades.
My kids are older than this 4Runner. Oh, wait, no, the 4Runner is older than my kids. Yes, and that
crazy.
is literal. And one of my kids is about to go into college. So
Yep. But solid, tested, bomb-proof.
Bomb-proof. But it's not fast. That 6-cylinder is not great in terms of performance for the amount of for the poor fuel economy that it gets. The transmission could use a few more cogs. It's kind of hunts sometimes, but it fits the whole family. It fits all your gear. It's comfortable to drive. It's a little dippy. You put the brakes on, you're going to do a little of this. But that's true of any off-road suspension vehicle. But it has multi-terrain select. It has crawl control. It has the locker in the back. Very comfortable to drive. I've driven across the U.S. multiple times in modern 4Runners. I owned one for a while. They're great. And that actually gives me hope because Toyota's doing a top-down thing with all their new off-roaders. They started with the Lexus, then the Land Cruiser's coming out. Well, the same chassis is going to be used for the new 4Runner as well. And the biggest difference there is really that the new 4Runner, instead of being full-time four-wheel drive with an expensive center torsion, torque sensing differential in the middle, it's going to be a part-time system most likely in most of the trims. And so because of that, you're going to end up with part-time where it's two-wheel drive, mostly switch it into four-wheel drive to do that. So it's possible they're going to keep the costs down to keep those in the 40,000 range. And you can easily buy a four-wheel drive 4Runner like an SR5 for under 40,000. So it does exist. But it's easy because those don't get the press. All the reviews are the TRD Pro, which is like 57,000 or 55. I don't know. We always get them with options, so ours are always slightly inflated in price. But I think that you're going to see. So Toyota first, they have the Lexus, then they'll have 4Runner, and then there's rumors that a new FJ might be coming to the US as well. So an FJ Cruiser might be coming back, and at that point, then that's going to be priced in below the 4Runner most likely, or they'll probably dovetail higher trim FJs will be the same price,
of course.
As the other one. But the old FJ was kind of like a 2.5 door. It had the two clamshell doors in the back and then the main doors in the front, and it was smaller physically than the 4Runner. But that could be a really good option, and that one would be prime for a hybrid setup, honestly, because your size is going to be lighter. It should actually get pretty good fuel economy, so it could be like a great universal vehicle. And I expect that will probably be priced. You should be able to at least get an entry level 4-wheel drive one for maybe low 30s. Hopefully, again, this product doesn't actually exist yet, but there are products coming out. I mean, Jeep, the one nobody talks about, the Compass. You can get a Compass. I mean, Compass is, If you load them up with the turbo motor
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
leather
they're
interior and the big display, they get close to 50 grand. And it's
which
like,
is insane.
no, in no
Yeah,
universe. I mean, that's pricing designed for discounting. It's
right.
like you don't want to spend that much on it. But if you can spend under 30 grand on a Compass
Yeah,
or around 30 grand, it's actually a good little crossover.
yeah,
So, they do exist. Oh, Subaru Crosstrek Wilderness. I have
yeah,
a long termer. That thing will drive through anything.
yeah. And I
And
drove
that
that.
thing
That was
was,
great.
yeah, 34,000 fully
Yeah,
loaded. So, they exist. But like what would the Grand Wagoneer Series 2 that I had was like $100,000. I think it had options, so it was like $110,000.
that's a big number.
There's too many of those, and I think that's kind of the
Right,
problem, and it really helps cloud the values you can find, is
right.
because all the ones they send out to the reviewers are these super expensive vehicles, and it's unfortunate. Now the average purchase price of a car in the US is in the high 40,000s right now,
Right.
so you can't really look at like a $45,000 car and say that's super expensive. I know a lot of viewers here, and they won't be
Sure.
wrong,
Right.
are saying, well, you're talking about $45,000 cars. Those are all really expensive. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
but they're also the average purchase price in the US
Well,
right
which
now.
is
So
nuts. I know.
it is nuts. But then, hey, let's talk about my health insurance. No. Okay.
Well, well, all right. Well, folks, Ryan, unfortunately we got to close up, but I wanted to say thank you for coming on as always.
Yep.
This was a really good episode about just talking about some off-roaders, talking about some of the technology, kind of dispelling some of the myths. Obviously, if you are looking for that off-roader, if you are looking for some of the best trail reviews out on the internet, go to Driving Sports TV, check out Ryan. He will leave no stone unturned and no question unanswered. Really
Yes.
comprehensive stuff. If you are looking for a classic or collectible, obviously go to Hemmings.com, check out the auctions, check out the make offer pages. We've got some amazing stuff there. Otherwise, that's it. Any other final thoughts?
No, I'd just say that the one nice thing about the resurgence of off-roading, it's brought a lot of the tech down, like with the X mode and that kind of stuff, to much less costly vehicles. So you actually have way more capability in even the entry-level vehicles than you've had historically. And so that's a win for everybody, I think. Even if you don't go off-roading much, even if you just try it on the weekend, most people have a vehicle that, if you have an all-wheel drive modern vehicle, you can get through most stuff.
Cool. Very good.
Don't overbuy. That's it.
There you go. Don't overbuy. All right, Ryan, thanks again for coming on, and everybody
again,
will
Mike.
see you. Of course, we'll see you next time on the Hot Rod Barbecue.
See ya.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod Barbecue podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.